So together with the Diaconia Council of Churches, the Durban Lesbian and Gay Center, and the other foundation, I want to welcome all of you from several different parts of our continent and overseas, particularly those who traveled far from West Africa. We're very embarrassed that a number of people from West Africa were in fact denied visas, not just found it hard to get, but were denied visas to travel. But those who have been able to be with us, especially from the Interfaith Diversity Network of West Africa, we very, very warmly welcome you. Those from East Africa, several countries in East Africa and all over Southern Africa, welcome. Welcome especially to our colleagues from the Commonwealth Secretariat who are with us today, Gary and Justin. The Commonwealth Secretariat has worked very closely with us to bring even more people than we would have been able to this convening, and we're very proud of our partnership with you. The Open Society Foundations, Max and Ian, it's a great honor to work very closely with you, and the levels of trust and confidence that you have in all these groups who are doing very hard but very meaningful work. Your support and ongoing solidarity is of the greatest value. So welcome. And to all of you, friends, those who were in the convening in 2016 in Pietermaritzburg at the St. Mofokeng Seminary, and those who were not, we're here because since then a lot has happened. We've made huge progress, visible and unseen, inside the churches and in the public sphere, in denominations, particular denominations, and at an ecumenical level, at global levels, and at very, 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 very local community levels. But we're very conscious that as our visibility, our voice, our presence grows, as our organizing grows, we are also faced with a very real pushback, a backlash. And this is not something only at major global convenings of church synods and those kinds of high-level platforms. The backlash is immediate. Some of us feel it very closely in our personal lives. In this room, there are people who have experienced the most hateful violence and discrimination from their church leaders and sometimes church communities. And many who are still struggling to fight back to that fact. Is trying to unpack what the character of that backlash is. Who is driving? More importantly, why is that happening? So we want to review our context, we want to analyze more deeply, and we want to look at possible ways forward that we should take collectively, not to return to positions of deeper fear on the one hand and deeper anger on the other hand, but in a way that actually transforms this moment into a breakthrough that takes us all much further down the path of progress. So our hope as the co-convening organizations for these days is that we can actually develop a transformative agenda, because equality, freedom, and dignity for LGBTI people is not just for LGBTI people, it's for all of us. It speaks to our humanness, it speaks to our faith, for those of us who are people of faith, it speaks to our gods, and none of us ever be truly free unless we all feel freedom and a sense of equality. And so I particularly want to welcome those amongst us who are not self-identifying LGBTI people, queer people. but who are here because they identify with that community of justice, social justice, economic justice, and equality. And I want you to feel at home, to feel welcome, to feel unafraid to express yourself, even though you may not know all the right words. Because you know LGBTI people can be very, very strict on their words. And several amongst us might be feeling really intimidated to express how we feel because we'd be scared of offending somebody. But in this space, we are all here to, because we're committed to the same cause. So let's carry each other along that path. We are all at different levels of exposure and knowledge and activism on these issues, but we are all here because we want to, and we choose to. But actually we're not all here, because there's about 80 people who are supposed to have joined us already and may join later during the day. So there may be people dropping in and leaving, and there'll be a core group of people who work through the processes these days. So the other day at our office in Johannesburg, we were hosting a meeting of big companies, big corporations, with the National Business Initiative of South Africa, looking at workplace equality, inclusion, diversity, and economic participation and empowerment of LGBTI people. And we have the group head of diversity and inclusion of Discovery. As some of you might know, Discovery is a very big South African corporation that started off in health insurance and now is a bank and all sorts of other things. Many people are being critical of Discovery for its domination of several sectors. But in that discussion, the person who spoke on behalf of Discovery said, their whole proposition is that they are committed as a company to make business out of well-being of people, of the health of a society. So their business model is that they want to incentivize good behavior. They want to incentivize people to be healthy. And in the bank that they've just established, they want to incentivize people to save and do make good economic decisions for themselves so that they are economically healthy. And the business model makes profit, so the business does good, does well, because they, on the basis of their core values, incentivize progress. Right? So they, whether it's true or not, they say they want to make money out of people being well and not out of people being sick. They want to make money out of people having more money and keeping more money in their bank, not out of spending money. And I wondered whether in this convening it could be possible, whether it should be possible, that as people of faith, and those who may not be people of faith but committed to social equality and social justice, that churches could, on the basis of their core values, in and through discussions like this, incentivize our church communities on the basis of their core values to advance, to progress, so that we all feel safe, we all are able to have a family, and that we are all able to make our contribution to our societies. To lead us in that process, it's a great honor to have two of the people that many of us admire very greatly, one of whom is Davis Makiala, who's the coordinator of the Interfaith Diversity Network of West Africa. So Davis is our co-facilitator based in Accra, very active in the churches, and other faith communities. The Interfaith Diversity Network covers a number of different religious traditions. And quietly and not so quietly, doing some very groundbreaking and deep work across the whole of West Africa on LGBTI issues with faith communities. We're very welcome. We're very happy to have you with us, Davis, as a co-facilitator. The other co-facilitator of this process is the co-chairperson of the other foundation, Bella Matambanatso, who's based in Harare in Zimbabwe. And Bella is many different things. Bella is a media personality, a feminist women's rights activist, a media freedom activist, and just a wonderful person. And we're very, very honored to have you with us, Bella, as a co-facilitator. So Bella and Davis are going to lead us over the next 2 days through several different processes. They will be assisted by a group of small group facilitators, and amongst those small group facilitators, Ian Sadi Swartz from the Open Society Foundations will coordinate that group. Then we have 4 others. So Lebogang Matela from the Fellowship of Christian Councils in Southern Africa. We have Pierre Buckley from the Global Interfaith Network. We have Vishnu from IDNOA, and we have Lucille from Uganda. They will meet them in small groups, and over the time, the same groups, so the co-facilitators will explain, but the same groups will meet several times over the 2 days. I want to invite you through that process to participate fully, but also to enjoy each other's company. We'll be off-site a little bit, so we'll be going to university and we'll be going to the Methodist Church in town. But over this time, please do take every moment to engage with each other in the discussions and sympathy. And with that, on behalf of Diaconia, Gordon Lesbian and Gay Center, and the other foundation, a very warm welcome.
The Lord be with you. Okay, I know the Christians in the hall, and I know the newcomers, the new converts, to speak. Well, this is where we want to hear some expectations from you. This is where we want you to do some reflection. As I speak, I think the card might be going round just as I speak. And we want everybody to have their own card. What we want to do with the card that is being shared now is to give you few minutes to reflect upon your expectation for this convening that we have gathered and from yesterday, and we're going to be today and tomorrow. So we just want you to do some reflection about that. I'm seeing the cards going, I think I better wait for everybody to have their cards so that they can look through when I am talking, because I will make comments that will reflect out of the things we have in the card. Is it okay to continue now? Yes. So if you look your card, if in front of you, you will see a logo. That logo, to me, is a dove. And that logo, you will see that the dove has something in its mouth. To some people, it might be hashtag. To some people, it might be the fruit of life. To some people, it might be, but we want you to reflect on the logo. and also reflect deeper on two things, notably some of your hopes for this convening or your worries. So in the front page of the card, you can write your hopes, and then you can turn the card back, and then you can write your worries. I think we can do this having 5 minutes to allow you to reflect and to write your hopes and worries in the card upon reflection, so that we will then get it back and then we will discuss it. And I know the number of participants here, so if you don't feel wrong, I will know it's you. Yes. Actually, I have the very answer for you, but one of the things I want to do is to put back that question to the panel so everybody will benefit from it. Do you mind? Yeah. So that we will have that discussion. Thank you for asking.
Panelists. So our sister Nomabelu Mvambo Dandala from Diaconia, who is a co-convener of this conversation and this gathering, please can you come up and take a seat? Thank you very much. And then Professor Thabo Msibi, chairperson of the Durban Lesbian and Gay Community and Health Center. He was here just now. There you go. Thank you. Please take a seat. And my brother, comrade Mfundis Teboho, class from the other foundation. So now what we'd like you to do is to please volunteer to share your hopes and your expectations. And we want the panel to respond to the hopes and the expectations as you present them. We have roving microphones. May I see those who are helping us? Thank you very much. Perfect. So we'll begin at the back. The row at the back, over there. If any one of you would like to share one hope. Yes?
Do you still have your cards? Yeah, share one from. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, from here. We are waiting.
The microphone, please. On this section of the room, we'd like to go first with you. If you'd like to share a hope. Yes, you'd like to share. Over here. Thank you. And if you could tell us your name and how we greet you.
Hello.
Come round. Thank you very much. And you can speak to the panel. Yeah. They'll be noting.
Good morning to you all. So I'm Diksha from Mauritius. And my hopes, I have 3 hopes, to better understand the barriers to acceptance, to be able to bring concrete solutions and transformative actions to make progress, and create a loving and enabling environment to engage true and frank discussions. These are my hopes.
Wonderful. Would you like to share your worries?
So my worries would be to be unable to engage voices that feel that they can't speak, that feel that they have some discomfort in expressing themselves, and not to be able to bring concrete solutions to break through the backlash.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Please give her a warm round of applause. Okay, if you could go next. If you come forward, because we've got our cameras rolling, yes, and we'd really love to capture you. Thank you. Proudly up on the platform. Thank you.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. My name is Leila Yaya from Ghana, and I would like to start with my hope. Okay, one day I hope every human from all faith backgrounds be open enough to accept all forms of diversity and embrace equality. And my worries, that's my fear. My worries are on body shaming. A lot of people can't embrace themselves because we ourselves, we body shame them. So because of this, they don't even stand out and say what they think because they feel anytime they get out to talk, someone is going to giggle about them. Someone is going to say something about them, which they are not going to feel good about. So they feel excluded. They can't. We always preach about inclusion, but we end up excluding them from our groups. Yeah. And I also stand against slut shaming and sexuality shaming. Thank you.
Super. Thank you very much.
So my hopes here is to, when I leave here, to find the link between sexuality and spirituality. That's my number one. And number two is, my hopes is that we link again the rural areas with spirituality and sexuality because we have our old grandmothers and so what is it that is done to the rural areas bringing this up? Yeah, I hope I'm making sense.
Thank
you. Makes sense, sure.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nana Bisidazi from Ghana. I'm come from the background of Methodists, and we normally say that rescue the perishing, but now I don't see that our churches are rescue the perishing, but rather pushing people out. So my hope face is that one day, all churches will understand the importance of equality as human, whether LGBT or not LGBT, so that we'll have a better life and have a better faith wherever we are. Because if you say that we want to rescue people or want to embrace people for God, then we don't have to look about the sexuality, but rather the faith that the people believe in it. So that is my hope. And my worries is that from the background I'm coming from, I can see that in our place, religion is very important as well as culture. And now you can see the churches is now collaborating with the traditional religion, fighting against LGBT. So my worry is that in as much as we are looking to churches, what are we going to also do to also call off for the traditional authorities? And as a chief, that's my worry. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Anthony. My Namibian counterparts backlashed on me yesterday for calling me half Namibian and half South African, so I claim I'm Namibian today. My hope is that we will leave this space with practical tools. These spaces creates a good platform for dialogue, but often we go home with what was said and we don't know what to do. But I hope that we will go home with practical tools. Another hope, and I'm looking at top, Professor Msibi. This notion of inclusive spaces, the term inclusive, can be so problematic. The more you create inclusion, the more you create exclusion. Because if you include this one, the other one feels excluded. How will we trouble this term, inclusion, in this context? My anxiety or my fear is that the discourse that we will have should not just be lensed through a South African reality. We have a holistic continent, and in parts of Africa, the word gay cannot even be mentioned. So when we speak here, that we are cognizant and aware that some parts you cannot even have a dialogue. So let's look at that as well. Thank you.
I'm Simba, I'm from Joburg. For me, I feel like the space is a necessary space because we can't ignore the fact that here in Africa, religion or Christianity forms our very so-called moral fiber. So that being the case, when we speak of homophobia, when we speak of LGBT rights, that directly links into what religion tells us is right or is wrong. So, and then when we look into that also, it also leads into one of the, there's a correlation between what we feel is right, which is formed by religion, and high depression, high suicide rates in the LGBTI people. And also, there is also that whole thing to say, in as much as religion is a part of us, but then there is a lot of exclusion in it. So at some point, there's a part of me that says, but then why do I not feel included in those spaces? So I'm hoping that this platform will begin that conversation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Zanele Makombe. I'm from Action of Churches Together in Solidarity Act Ubumbano. My expectation in this space is to actually learn how can I, as an ally, be able to speak up and not take over the spaces of the LGBTI community. How do I speak up? How do I stand and say, no, this can't happen, and speak up against injustices? At the same time, how do I allow voices of LGBTI communities to speak for themselves? My fear is that as we are talking here, we're in different levels or we're at different stages as we're going. How do we carry each other? How do we move together in this space? Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, everyone. I'm Tuli from Inclusive and Affirming Ministries. My thing is, it's just one thing, around collaborative partners, authentic relationships and networks. So if we're saying that you're working with the Anglican Church in Namibia, who is the face? What are you doing? How does it look like? Don't tell us what you write in your donor report or in your request for donor funding. Tell us who you've worked with, what has worked, what needs to be addressed. Because we come into spaces, we talk lovely, we say, this is what's happening. We have people who've been activists for a long time sharing, what they've done. But then when you're on the ground and you're wanting concrete evidence, if I go into Kenya now, who can I call and I know that I can work with this group and that group, and I know that if I'm wanting to create a space where we're talking about bisexual women being silenced and being victims of crime in church, how do I get into that space? I think with my side, I'm a bit anxious around the whole talk shop thing. I've been part of Breaking the Backlash since Peter Maritzburg, when it was started with the Gay and Lesbian Network, and 2016, and I'm still here. And this is why I say authentic relationships with networks that have the contacts and that have the proof, the evidence of work. Because if we're going to work, we want to work with those who are working, and we'll leave the talkers to talk and meet.
Powerful.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Butinkosi. I'm coming from the National Department of Basic Education in Pretoria. I've got one hope and one fear. My hope for this gathering is that we can take these important discussions beyond this house. I'm hoping that we can bring these issues in the education system, because these issues, they also exist in our schools. They also cause violence based on gender. These issues, the pushback, the backlash, is actually normalized by our religious leaders, by our parents. And if you are to educate the young ones if you are to do this in a transformative way, then we need to involve the young ones in the discussions.
Okay.
My fear is the interpretation of the scriptures. Because the way you interpret the scripture might be different from how she interprets the scripture. How do you then deal with that? Because you might find that some of our churches who are traditional might say, well, you've seen the scripture in this way and I'm seeing it in this way. And if you're trying to bring that science lens, they would say you're trying to dilute their traditions, their practices. What is it that we need to do to help those churches? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Onsani Mbama from Eastern Cape at Batawet. I'm also a radio presenter at the Kenya Community Radio. My hope and my expectation on our churches, stop discriminalize and stop stigmatize a gay people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also victim on my church. Since someone knows me, I'm gay, and then stop going to church. I'm also hope from after this session, I expect all members of churches and all members of communities, you can engage LGBTI community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Tracy Wright. I'm from South Africa. My hope is that this conference will not be one that's just about discussions that will get left here, that something concrete and solid will come out of it, because that's what we need. My fear is that last night at the discussions that we had with Dr. Kusaka was that there are third forces from countries like the USA who fund our ground roots churches. How do we address those issues? Because those are one of the issues that need to be addressed at grassroots levels. If we can address that, then maybe we ourselves here can have a better chance of looking after our brothers and sisters and ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'd like our panelists to begin to prepare to make a very brief input as our last speaker comes forward. Thank you. Kat.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katlego Kalenganikisipila. I'm the director of Cat Kai Caucus International from Botswana. Shout out to 2512. I'm a practicing Catholic, just so it's known, and I opted for it. So my hopes are, one, to disrupt Judeo-Christian patriarchy. And I hope that at no point in our discussions are we addressing religion and faith in a binary way, because the trans-identifying folks are here and DNC people are here. So when we talk about brothers and sisters, let's also acknowledge that not everyone's a brother and sister. Number two, this idea of Christianity as the norm. We love J-Dog, but J-Dog and Muhammad are also friends. So let's acknowledge that when we talk religion, it's not just about Jesus, who I dig, he's my friend. And the fear that I have the most, trash men, guys. All the trashiness, please beware of the trash in your mouth. And we understand that there are people who are believers who will feel challenged by some of our opinions. Be as open to listening to us as we will be to listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'd like to thank you for participating in the hopes and expectations. Our volunteers are going to collect the cards, so please hand them over because we'd love to keep those as a record. We're going to hand over to our panelists to give us their thoughts, and we'd like to remind the panelists of that very first question: what is the church in this context? So over to you.
Firstly, that we conceive the idea from the perspective that the majority of communities and societies, at least in Southern Africa, are Christian. And that they have a history of social,
equality and justice engagement from which, and it is perhaps from there that I also know that the entire question of what is meant by church is also discussed, because there are layers of manifestations of what church is. What, at least in terms of basic definition, is Christians, followers of Christ who espouses particular values, and that the followers follow those values and have a mission of sharing those values to change the world. But that we know that church is also manifested in various ways. Many of us, we see church as church leaders, the ordained in particular. Whilst within the church itself, that people would see church as both the leaders and the followers or the laity. So that's a thing that's there. In terms of the liberational trajectory, it's that church is essentially the very prophetic voice of the lowly, the people themselves. And therefore we are meaning in that terms, and that's why we believe we believe in all, we want to engage those who are leaders, but we also want to engage with those who are the followers or the laity, those who are engaged on a day-to-day basis with relationship buildings. That's what church is, what we believe should be understood.
Thank you, colleagues, for your insightful and sort of critical inputs on your hopes and concerns. I think on top of what Teboho has said, and acknowledging that a huge number of individuals on the continent follow the Christian faith, I do think that it is important that we acknowledge that there exists a greater diversity of religious faiths, and in fact that the church in the conversation today can actually include other voices beyond the Christian faith, because we know, for example, in Nigeria there is a huge following of the Muslim faith, and many parts of the continent. And so I think the conversation ought to understand that complexity of a diversity of religious bodies, religious entities, faiths. Spirituality could be one of them, beyond just the Christian faith. I do also think that we need to acknowledge that we exist in a very ambiguous space. I think for many of us, the very notion of church and feeling safe in a church it presents a sense of discomfort. Many of us don't go to church. So I think the very notion of having to start having a conversation about what it is that pushed us out of the church or makes us feel uncomfortable in the church is something that we have to sort of engage head on or engage with head on. Of course, acknowledging that there's been incredible work that has been done in a range of spaces, diaconia. I mean, that video that we saw earlier on demonstrating that there is this work that is being done, that the church is starting to move and shift its positioning. But at the same time, we know that the church in itself is very and can be very violent to queer bodies, can be very violent to individuals who share sexualities such as our own, or gender, sort of who are non-binary. So the conversation ought to acknowledge that complexity, I think, and sort of capture the essence of the broader diversity as opposed to sort of a unified body of Christ, so to speak.
Hi, everybody. I would like to start with a confession. I'm deeply emotional at the moment because I've known Thabisile Cesana for decades. But for the first time this morning, I learned of her specific particular struggle about her daughter. And my dear sister, I hope that despite the backlash from the church, that one way or another, you have been able to find love, warmth, and support. And I do appreciate what you have been going through, what you must still be going through. And for me personally, I think that's going to strengthen our relationship, because there are many Thabisiles out there. Some of them have not had the courage that you've had. I think you deserve a round of applause. Secondly, for the first time in my life, through yesterday, in fact, prior to preparing for this convening, I didn't quite get in touch with my emotions, but I think yes, last night and today, and just engaging with others are connected with my personal experience. In my immediate family, we've got a daughter who's lesbian, but it's something that's not talked about openly. And as a result, she is experiencing what some of you must have experienced. And that, for me, that's what I'm struggling with at the moment, because this issue is more real to me than ever before. I'll therefore try to move on, hoping that I'll be able to continue with the rest of this panel. If I can add my voice, what has been said regarding the church. The church is a contested terrain, and the church is not homogeneous. I know this is a religion convening, meaning that it's broader than just Christianity. And we're also in a city, Durban, which is multi-religious, multi-faith. And there is strong collaboration amongst other faiths that we are enjoying at the moment. Having said that, so I think do forgive me, and some of us who now and again may speak about the church or Christianity. But at the back of our mind, personally, I'm mindful that this is an interfaith platform. The church is more than a building. There are various levels of the church. It's not a building. Well, building is one tiny aspect of it. It's more than the hierarchy, the church leadership. The other level of the church, which is often not appreciated, is the people in the pews, the warm bodies that are in those walls, some of whom do not just practice their Christianity or their faith on a Sunday. They practice it on a daily basis. The church, as I said, it's not homogeneous because some are pro-social justice, some don't want anything to do with social justice. They are disconnected from the lived experiences of the people. So we just need to be aware that when we're talking about the church, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is applicable to all the other faiths, that what I'm saying about the church is also real about the other faiths. Some people have even argued that as much as now and again we talk about how prophetic the church was pre-1994, it was in the forefront of the struggle. But again, if we reflect on that, it was not the entire church. There were those who were pro-apartheid, but it was those significant small numbers of Christians who took it upon themselves to make sure that the prophetic voice of the church is vocal. I have no doubt that in this particular cause that we are about, the LGBTI, there again, we're not going to find a groundswell of support. Let's not fool ourselves. We're not going to find a groundswell of support. But those, the few that are there, that are energetic about it, are enough to make an impact, and as we did during apartheid. I think one of the things, I mean, some of the hopes here have been, I don't know if I can move to that now before I lose my voice, because I think I'm going to lose it just now. I think amongst all the hopes and fears, particularly the hopes that have been shared, really hope that there will be practical strategies that come out of this, which encourage, challenge each one of us to ensure that indeed this is not a talk shop. Indeed, when we go out there, we will touch, yes, as much as the abstract, engagements, conversations, which to a large extent are still up there, they don't really touch the people on the ground. So my hope is that we will take it upon ourselves, commit to ensuring that we're creating conducive spaces out there for the Tabisiles, because there are many Tabisiles there. For those families who don't feel comfortable in our traditional churches, for me, if we can commit and make that a reality, come the next convening, indeed we'll be talking, we'll be having a different conversation, basically. Thank you.
No, thanks. 1 minute?
Yes, please go
So
ahead.
I think also in relation to the hopes that were shared, I think it is absolutely critical to appreciate what Anthony was talking about earlier. The need for us to be able to move beyond a narrative that is centered on South Africa, but to understand that we live in a continent that is quite complex. And so the type of conversation that we have has to be reflective of the wider continent and actually that complexity. We have a tendency when we get to circles like this to replicate the very same narratives that you'll hear in conferences in Sweden, Germany, America, elsewhere, not actually appreciating that we are actually located in a particular space that requires particular responses. And I think it's critical when we get to a moment where we start narrating a South African discourse that we speak out and we actually start troubling that. I think it's going to be critical in the conversation moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard one of the things is that about being here, most of the people who are here are as a result, firstly, of their own personal commitment. I think a majority of the people who are here came through scholarships that were offered and they applied. They motivated why they want to be here. And that therefore, we know that firstly, it's about the personal commitments of the people who are here, that this convening is going to produce what is actually stated to be practical tools, because there is a sea of expertise in various areas of engagement that are identify the fact that there is in real terms backlash, but instead of engaging in ways that are antagonistic, they will seek to find ways that are transformative so that the encounters continue to increase the speed with which things have happened up to this far, because whatever happened up to this far is not coincidental. It has been because of the direct engagements that have come out of the people who are in this place with the institution called church, or even with governments or with courts and all of that. So that what we are saying is we believe in the skills that are sitting in this place to produce the practical tools, the concrete solutions about how to then take these encounters a step, upscale them, so that instead of being depressed, as Alan Busak was saying, instead of just looking at what depresses us, we should begin to celebrate the things we are capable of doing to even change the narrative that we are about today.
Please help me in giving our panelists a warm round of applause. As our co-conveners and hosts, they've responded to our hopes and expectations. We put them under fire by asking them to not know what our hopes and expectations were before. And we'd like to thank you for showing tremendous generosity and grace, if I may say it that way.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound